Topic for today's discourse is also let's unbox gender and masculinity. In an ideal situation, we would have wanted this event to have taken place physically in an auditorium or a screening room where all of us would have been present, and we would have seen a 13-minute documentary and we would have deconstructed it. Because of the lockdown situation, we can't. But what we have been doing, like we did with our last event of the online dissemination of the Samabhav Film Festival, we simulate the same using social media and using the digital mediums. We simulate this conversation, this discourse online. So the idea is that we are all the world over, across cultures, we are struggling with very straight jacketed definitions of gender and masculinity. So the idea is to let us unbox it. Let us find different ways of looking at it. Let us see how masculinity is manifested. What are the contexts to it, and through a wonderful 13-minute film called Keep Talking by Radhika Lata Murthy. I will want to do a proper introduction of Radhika after we see the film. But before that, thank you, Radhika, and really we welcome you heartily for being the first filmmaker with whose film we are kickstarting this online conversation. And if there is anything you would like to say, I mean, usually filmmakers don't like to say anything before the film. They would want people to watch the film and then discuss it. But if there is anything you would like to say before we start the film, please feel free.
I just like to say thank you so much for inviting me here and screening my film. I don't know if anybody from my team is here, but yeah, there was like a extended team also making the film with me. So I think it's best if we talk after watching the film.
I again want to thank all the people who have been with us in this online simulation from countries ranging from the United States of America to Burundi. And thank you really for coming across time zones and making this a very, very important discussion. So I will start with the introduction of the filmmaker, Radhika Lata Murthy, who also happens to be my film school's alumnus, and we were also on the campus at the same time. She lives and writes, makes films in Pune, and she's been making documentaries on various social issues pertaining to gender and mental health for the past 8 years. And more recently, she's been writing fiction, screenplays, and stories. And let me also tell you, she was involved with the award-winning the next best thing that is going to come out from India, which is my guess, which is The Disciple, directed by Chaitanya Tamhane. And I'm really particularly very interested because she's got, in some sense, the two forms to come together. Street play being filmed and the discourse being continued. And the most hopeful line for me of the film was like, "Aao Maidan pe." For the ones who don't understand Hindi, let's meet in the playground and talk. So I invite Harish and Radhika, Aao Maidan pe, and everyone else too, to ask questions. And let's unbox gender and masculinity. Please, Radhika, you want to tell us about your journey?
Yeah, thanks so much. It was a lot of fun for me to watch this film after a few years now. I made it in 2013. So there is an organization called PSBT in Delhi called Public Service Broadcasting Trust. Every year they used to have like a theme on which they commission documentaries. So this was supposed to be a 10-minute documentary on gender violence. So I started researching for it, and I submitted a proposal, and very honestly, I don't remember exactly what I wrote in the proposal, but there was something about like a play and going and talking to people on the street. But while I was thinking about it and talking to a few people around me and all of that, it really shouldn't be like a very eureka moment, but because like the discovery is not mine. But I just suddenly had this thought that, hey, like we should be talking to guys about this, like we should be talking to men about this, because most of the times the perpetrators are men. So why is feminism constantly engaging with women and what women have to say, and then empowering women, and It's also called violence against women, which is like a passive form of saying the violence that men commit. So everything is constantly in passive voice. So I sort of then started exploring along those lines, and that's when actually I uh, heard about Mava, and I went and met Harish in Bombay, and we had a conversation. And anyway, eventually it evolved to this, and I had thought that to start off this conversation, one needs to have, just like we are starting this conversation today about toxic masculinity through this film. There has to be something to start talking to men, which is the street play. So also as a form, I always I thought it would be exciting to write a play within a film. So I kind of wrote the play, and there's a theater group in Pune. Some of my friends are part of it, called Natak Company, and Alok Rajwade and a few other people came on board, and then we practiced the play on my terrace in at home, and then we sort of presented it in 4 places in Pune. So we tried to make sure that it was sort of like a representative for spaces. You can never fully represent a society, but we went to a sort of a big society, and then on one of the big chalks, and then we went to Budwarpet, which is like the red light area in Pune, and another a main road sort of on FC Road. So and then we tried to talk to a cross section of men through it, whoever was watching the play. After the play, we would go and ask them for reactions. So and then as you saw in the film, in that one sort of small basti that we were performing, it's also possible that they probably didn't get the sarcasm in the play, honestly. So they kind of people got a little confused and disturbed, and then they stopped the performance. And I was actually very disappointed when that happened during the shoot. And I was wondering that, oh, I don't think I'm going to get the kind of film I want. And then we sort of packed up from there and started walking out when these kids came and started talking to me. And they were just excited about a shoot happening. And then they just started talking. And actually at that time, interestingly, my camera person, Vandita, was actually reversing the car to leave from there. So immediately we just I just shuffled around, and my editor essentially started rolling with the camera that we were holding in our hand. And then that whole scene happened in the end, which eventually, I didn't think it was important at that time, but I mean, I was just having a genuine conversation with those guys, but then it sort of became the conclusion. So sorry if I'm going on, I'm just getting a little nostalgic. So
not at all. In fact, I'm very inspired by your genesis of actually saying that why aren't we talking to the men, about this, and which which brings me to the work Mava has been doing, which is that if the boys and men are the part of the problem, they have to be a part of the solution, because it cannot really work in this isolation that women's group will only do that. So coming to Harish, you have been working extensively in Maharashtra, and when I'm sure a lot of us, when we saw this film, we could recognize these characters, as our neighbors, as our relatives, and the kind of things they were reading, these WhatsApp toxic kind of WhatsApp forwards or poetry, or but I wanted to ask Harish that, is this the only limited kind of masculinity that you come across in your work? I'm sure there is a range, but how have you dealt with and negotiated with that range?
So, firstly, a big salute to Radhika for taking the initiative, some years ago. Today at least there is some murmur about toxic masculinity, but she explored it much earlier, and being a woman. So, I mean, with all humility, I would like to put it on record that she did research on it, met people, read about it, and then made this film. So I think it is quite commendable. And I think in the film, the different voices which were there of men, they are in a way representative of what we see, as a microcosm in the society. So, bulk of the responses, as you would see, are of men who adhere to the dominant model of masculinity, which is called as the hegemonic, and in a way, which is the toxic masculinity, a new name, but in a particular context it is. So bulk of them are having, say views like conquest, that we should win over, that woman is a thing to be won over. She's not a human being. So conquest, which came from one of the participants, then winning in at any cost, always be an achiever, always should not express your emotions. All those factors are there, but I always say that there are three markers of the prevalent form of masculinity in our society. One is performance, masculinity related to performance, which is that men have to perform at different stages in their life, right? There's a saying that whether from boardroom to bedroom. So that means that, at any stage, they have to show that they are one step ahead of women and always a winner, achiever, they should not take a no from anybody, so performance wise, there is therefore an anxiety, because if you are not able to perform to the expected roles of a society, of the society by for them. So first, as I said, a marker is on performance. Like, you often find that two men in generally when they converse, they try to exaggerate sometimes the facts. A piece of land, how much you have. Nobody's going to check somebody, but they will exaggerate because they are supposedly. And the same thing goes for the penile size, to how much property you have, and how many girls did you had sex with. So, if a boy who doesn't have a girlfriend or who hasn't had any sex is made to feel that he is of a lesser man in the eyes of others and also in his own eyes. So therefore, the expectations, the yardsticks of performance, that is the first marker. The second is risk-taking, that men are supposed to take risk. So just few days ago, we had Dahi Handi festival where, there are tires on a human pyramid. And, one of my activist friends says that even Lord Krishna, when he might have to break the coconut, the handi of curds, he might not have thought of 5 to 6 tires that he might have to, rise up to break. But the modern day men, and noticeably you would see whether it's Mumbai and other parts of Maharashtra, the youngest boy, the child, male child, is made to go on the top of all the men who are in tires. So what is that connote? It's a sort of risk taking. A few days later, we are having Muharram, and in the season of Muharram, so you find that how much pain a Muslim man bears. So there is a cut made on his forehead. So the more he bears the pain is a yardstick of a faithful and a good man. So or also a man drinking liquor without adding water, smoking cigarettes despite knowing the ramification, without wearing condom, having sex. So all there are examples of risk taking. And the third marker is, if one is not able to do the first marker, which is a performance, then what you will resort to is addictions and violence. So the third marker is of violence. When you are not able to achieve what society is expecting, when a girl is saying no to you, even when you express your love, without realizing that you're talking about relationship between two people and there should be consent. So you find when men are not able to take the no and they are not achievers in the expectations of the society, then they will resort to violence. Either they will do harm to the opposite gender, to the woman, or they may do self-harm. So, these markers are usually of the dominant model which you see around. But you asked me a question earlier, that is that the only model? So, this model of dominant model of masculinity is being reinforced by all our subsystems in our society. So whether it's the family, religion, education, governance, or you call media. They are all reinforcing. So it doesn't mean that there are no other models of masculinity. So masculinity, just like femininity, is not a unitary construct. It's not a homogeneous construct. There are different kinds of masculinity. Of course, there are some kinds like complicit masculinity, which, men are complicit to the actual who are hegemony kind of carriers. So, and at the same time, there are subordinated masculinity. There is marginalized masculinity. And what I have been striving is a gender equitable model of masculinity, which is possible. So through my work, 27 plus years with young men and adolescent boys, when you work consistently, because, we all say that gender is a social construct, right? So if it is a social construct, that means it is subject to change. That means there can be social engineering. That means you have to work with mindsets. You have to work with attitudes. And for that, it means you have to invest time and effort, which I think is very, not happening to the extent it should be. So there are other forms of masculinity around us. There are men who cry. There are men who are, without uttering the word gender equality, are doing all household chores, but they are nowhere represented in the media. They are not talked about men. There's a dearth of role models among men. So you find whether it's high achievers in professional field, but
Right.
in terms of men of substance, you find there's a dearth of role models.
Right.
So, yes.
Men of substance being one more marker which could give more anxiety to the men, that not just the winner, but I was reminded of a very interesting quote from a poem by Vikram Seth when Harish was talking about this homogeneous idea or straight-jacketed idea of masculinity, where he's spoken about sexual orientation, and those two lines I remember, I think, are in a world of gay and straight, where am I? Stray or simply great? Like he's used the word stray and straight and gay and kind of mixed them and found, like, phonetically found a range of possibilities, that even a language offers. Then why is it that our mind gets so stuck with this crisis in masculinity, so to speak, where all these pressures and anxieties that Harish spoke about, performance risk taking, why the markers that happen, and how is it actually affecting the mental health of men? Because Radhika, a lot of your work in the last few years has been working around mental health, and how is this manifested in the intersectionality of our society, with men being leaders, corporate bosses, for falling under pressure in positions of governance, military strategy, things like that. So because it's affecting, every decision is going to affect a gamut of other elements. And I thought there was an opportunity with Sushant Singh Rajput's unfortunate demise to really talk about how vulnerable men could be and what are the pressures for what is the idea of success. But then it has been co-opted into something else. So if Harish and Radhika, you would like to speak about the mental health aspects of this masculinity crisis.
I wouldn't say that I've done a study or anything, but so I made 2 films on homeless mentally ill people, and it was through 2 NGOs. One was based in Pune and Maharashtra, and the other was in Kolkata. So in those 2 films, there are a few women mostly that I have profiled, and a couple of men, and their journey from sort of their background to how they reached the streets, and then they sort of got rehabilitated, and what they're doing now. So through this, one talks about the mental health system and treatment and things like that, and also prejudices and wrong ways of looking at mental health, and also real stories of resilience. So when I was talking to a bunch of psychiatrists and psychologists who work in this field, and just from observing and talking to a few of the people during the course of these films, I realized that what's happening generally is, from what Harish was mentioning, that because of all these various kinds of pressures, I guess like there are pressures on all, like everybody in society, actually, whether they are men or women or on the spectrum, there are different kinds of pressures to conform. And on men especially, there is this big pressure to be like providers or protectors in some way. So yes, there is one end of them who becomes violent or who are aggressors, but there is a whole set of other people, other men who end up sort of feeling really, really bad about themselves, and it could manifest as severe mental illness sometimes. While I don't know if there's like a direct correlation between that pressure and being severely mentally ill. I'm sure that there's like a range of complex reasons why one ends up like that. But overall, one can say that this kind of pressure from society to be a certain way definitely contributes to, while it contributes to aggression, it also contributes to severe mental illness and feeling sort of adrift and sort of not being able to fulfill any of the roles. Also, on a very day-to-day basis, I feel like today, in this age where I wouldn't say all, but a lot of women are very educated, and they've also been taking up sort of roles in society as earners and as providers. And there are many women from all strata of society who actually are doing both the roles. Like they're also the carers and nurturers, which is their traditional role, and then they're also assuming like the so-called modern role of being the breadwinner and having the ability to buy things and education and asserting themselves. So in this, there's a question that one needs to explore and see that what is the role sort of left for men? Do they feel threatened that they don't have the provider's role anymore? And if they're not able to do the provider's role for whatever range of reasons, do they feel that they are nothing then? Like they're not neither here nor there. And because of social and media sort of the way men are supposed to be, they can't easily take on like the carer or nurturer or homemaker's role. So on one hand, women are pressured into being like super women and doing like these double things, and men are sort of, I don't know, actually, it's maybe men should explore this for themselves, that are they left with no role? I was thinking about this, and
yeah, it sounds like a double-edged sword. No, like first the problem is that the role is that we are breadwinners. That's the problem. Now is like you've taken away that role from us too. So what are we left with? So it's like patriarchy is working in such subtle and intense ways.
Yeah, and like the final point is that nobody has any fixed role. You do whatever works for you in your given circumstances, and everybody in every situation is just doing their best. So whatever
Radhika,
works for you.
Thanks, Radhika. I have a technical question that Jyotsna Garg has asked.
Sure.
So so I'm going to ask that, which you can answer. That's a very short answer. But after that, I want to ask you one more question. And while you are thinking about that answer, I will ask a question to Harish. So
sure.
The first question is, what camera did you use for making this? Which is, I'm sure a very simple answer. And after that, you can talk about a lot of people are curious. Udayan Philip, for example, is very curious about what is the second part of the skit, which we didn't see. And can you please share how it ends? Because it kind of sets up a lot of things about the gender spectrum in that. But what happens that? So yeah, you can first speak about the camera, and then I'll ask Harish a question.
Sure. The camera was, we used two 5D Canon 5D cameras. They were relatively smaller cameras, so we could go around and be more mobile. So there were two cameras because there were two camera people.
Okay, thank you. And Harish, you've already seen the question in the chat room too. So Chris and David and a couple of other people, the men of substance, the idea of a man of substance, which definitely, because we also come from a world where we've seen it being advertised to sell products, like the real men and the complete man, and so even a word like man of substance comes with connotations. So if you could explain a little more about that.
So, this phrase, a man of substance, is, when talked about it, I referred to men who are, you know, with their real self. They are, talking as much what they have achieved, but at the same time, they're openly talking about their anxieties, their vulnerabilities, the inner turmoil which they are going through, if at all, without any hesitation or fear. So I find that there is a dearth. And, always there are examples of role models among men in terms of professional achievements. But when I say a man of substance is somebody who takes up stands, active stands with respect to any kind of discrimination or violence against women, either specifically women in their lives or when they see across any incident happening. So, I find that in any field in India, whether it is sports, culture, or acting, or, there is a dearth of people who would say that I stand for this particular cause, I stand for the rights of women because in my personal life, I believe so and so. There's a dearth of that, which you will not find unlike in the West. So for example, I'll give an example of this well-known sports person, Roger Federer. Many of us might have been knowing or have read that during interviews that any time whether he loses or wins, he always found to be crying. Those tears are out of whatever. And of late, he, as his two young daughters who are, when they were toddlers and they're still infants. So he has told in interviews I have read where he says that, to me, what matters is what my wife and my two daughters, what they think, how I have played. That makes me important. That is critical to me, not what others, so, somebody who can relate in their day-to-day life with the woman in their lives and takes up a stand. I will not name, I just want to tell an example when I say a man of substance. A well-known cricketer in India, I don't want to name it, you can guess. He was inaugurating the directory of a women's helpline. All the different phone numbers of helplines which are meant to support women in distress, that inauguration was done at his hands. And in his opening speech, he made a remark saying that, this helpline is very handy for several distressed women, and we should not forget that a woman is somebody's sister, somebody's daughter, somebody's wife, And I was a bit disheartened because, I was just thinking before me, any person who doesn't have a sister, doesn't have a mother, or is unmarried, does that mean that that person cannot take a stand? Why is the relational thing with respect to either somebody's wife, somebody's daughter, why not as a human being? That because she's a human being and she has a right to life of dignity, that I should be standing up for that. So I find that there's a dearth of people, when in my 27 plus years, we had contacted men from diverse fields. They, all appreciated for some time about our cause, after knowing what we have specifically accomplished. But when it comes to taking up a stand, I will not name them. These are all well-known names, whether they are actors, sports person, or business persons, they have shied away in coming ahead and taking an active stand and telling that I stand up for this. I stand up for the rights of a woman. So because in their personal lives, perhaps that may not be a value, which they hold cherish. So I think it's all, so that is what where, so the men of substance are people like who take up active stands, and at the same time, they are the real self. They will not put the mask, which is expected of the society, that you have to be always winning, always achieving, and, always in terms, but at the same time, they are open to show their vulnerable face equally, so That is what when I meant, and those who take up active stands, basically that. But I remember one question. I think you were asking that masculinity is in a crisis. I think you asked to Radhika. So, I just wanted to add a line on that, that really masculinity is in a crisis, but for a majority of the people, they are unaware. They do not examine this, that really masculinity is in a crisis. So, efforts towards gender-based violence or gender-based discrimination on women are largely focused on women and girls, work with them, empower with them, and things will change. Is that kind of mantra which is there among all the stakeholders. So there's, hardly, so you find one incident happened in the independent India. The Delhi gang rape incident was the first incident when a large number of young men were on the streets. But I must tell you that despite this positive achievement, there was no effort done to ensure that the energies of those young men is channelized towards preventive work. They all gathered for solidarity, but if reflection would have been there that why men are like that, what you see in majority around, why are they, resorting to violence and aggression, that was not touched upon or reflected by those teeming youths who had gathered in large numbers. So I find, so the crisis is, and you find the different shades of masculinity in our society at various levels, from the micro to the macro level, just to expand what I'm trying to tell. So micro, when I say, is man-woman relationship in households at the family level. There you find the tussles happening where, women are getting assertive and men feel insecure or threatened. They fumble, they don't know how to respond. So that is at one level. But at the other levels, you find whether it is militarization, where the effort is, to spend more on defense, rather less on education and health, and the idea behind that, you should teach the enemy a lesson, through the weapons and all that, or whether it is terrorism, where young boys are radicalized into activities of terrorism, where they are told, Radhika used the word provider. So these men are told that, you have to take care of your families. We will do that. You fight for jihad. You fight for your religion, So you find that radicalization of young men, there is an element of that toxic masculinity. And most importantly, at a macro level, you see in leadership of men at the top. So whether it is, our own Prime Minister Narendra Modi, or Trump, or, the Prime Minister of Brazil, you find that there is an element of toxicity in their talk, in their behavior, So I find that the range of this masculinity and its manifestation is something which people haven't examined in the seriousness. And therefore, I would say that it is in a crisis. Because, and you cannot expect a messiah or some savior to come and tell the men that, look, you should awaken yourself. It's only the sensitive and caring men in each of the subsystem who will have to engage with other men and peers and take the conversation forward.
Thank you, Harish. We're just running a little late on time,
Yeah.
so I didn't want Radhika to remember what is the second part of the skit too much. So please, Radhika, if you want to speak about what all we missed because the play was stopped.
Yeah, no, I'll be very brief. So actually, the play was supposed to be this sarcastic, funny take on the whole thing, which is get people talking. So the second part involved the women sort of sarcastically saying that, men are like the best. So, theek hai, you need to become our protectors and aap abhi bhaiya ban jao. So then there was one whole sequence in which they went around and then they pretended to, like they literally chased the men and tied like a rakhi forcibly, etc. It was supposed to be fun, and in the end, like there was like a song which sort of the film was supposed to end on the rap song that it started on, actually, in the edit. So there was a lot of revision of it like later on while making the film. But the idea was sort of to sarcastically say that then, you know, if this is the way men are, like, if they are going to be like the aggressors and that's how they're going to be, then they're going to have to take on roles that they don't want to also, which is what is happening in the toxic masculinity situation. I feel that men are many times like forced to do and take on things that they actually don't want to. So they are like as unhappy as women are. Like, I mean, everybody's unhappy if they're forced into anything. So that's how it ended.
Right. And you know, I'm particularly interested. There are a lot of big questions being asked, and Altamash is sending me some options. But you know, the use of since you worked with both the forms in this theater, street play, street theater, which also is something that Mava has been regularly working with across youth in Maharashtra to use, you know, where the voice is their main medium of communication, and both have their some very tricky challenges. Especially like from what I could see, you know, you were in an slightly enclosed space, and you had a captive audience which would have stayed till the end because had the play continued till the end. But
Yeah.
but like, let's say if it's happening on a street or in an open space where, you know, somebody is only seeing the first 3 minutes, you know, which is actually you are setting up the crime to then come to a resolution. But you know, how do we negotiate with these choices? So you know, how was it as a maker to handle both these mediums and differently?
Okay, so I had many collaborators actually. So I wrote the play and I talked to a theater group, like I said, Natak Company, and we worked together to do it. And we also thought about this, that what if like people don't watch it till the end? And there I think a little bit of my filmmaker mind came into play, and I was like, maybe we'll perform the play later for like other people, or like in general, like we'll organize like a proper show for the play itself. But right now, what I'm really looking for is the reactions of people. So whoever it is who's watching, and we also took a lot of shots of people actually watching like the play, even those shots. So the idea was to sort of mismatch all of these things, and in this particular film, all we could do was to give an experience of the play being watched, and it just so happened that it got this kind of a reaction in that particular place, which I could use to convey my point. So honestly, I don't think I've done justice at all to the medium of theater. I wouldn't claim to in any way have done anything in the field of theater. I used it as a form for the film. Essentially, it was like it was supposed to be like in the film medium, and to get the essence of like people's reactions. So I don't know if that
Right.
makes sense to the.
No, obviously, yeah, of using, like, you know, and because it's, I think, as what the idea of cultural advocacy or digital advocacy says, that, you know, yeah, the mediums that we have, you are using them to actually communicate your questions, your concerns, and, you know, your reflections on present day society. So, Altamash, are we doing good with time? There's a question from Rima Govil, which I'd like to ask probably both.
We have crossed 7:30, but we still have like 119 participants. I think people are good here, so maybe we can continue. Maybe
Okay,
you can take
okay,
another question. Yeah.
sure. So, yeah, and I think this question very interestingly could also be like very good for closing comments, even from Mava's side and Radhika. That the question says, gender stereotyping and attributing gender roles happens during early age of socializing. How do you think we can address this at an early age during the formative years of schooling and at home? It's a question just like the end of the film, you know, where they said playground pe aana maidan mein. Like, it's really that how do we, if we, the kind of work for the stakeholders that there is, whether it's men, women, people who are activists, who are not, but you know, this problem is going to affect all of us equally. So how do we see the roadmap for stakeholders to come in and start having an influence from an early age, and how do we help that with all the subsystems that, you know, form society? So maybe we can end on a hopeful note for, you know, what could be the future for people who are you're wondering very and feeling very strongly about things like this.
You know, as an activist, I would like to say that, you know, this if gender equality is a value that has to be, you know, right from childhood, you know, there are no two opinions about it. It has to be inculcated right from a younger age, and therefore the role of both the parents is equally important. And, you know, so I have a sociologist friend from the Tata Institute who says that my 4-year-old or 5-year-old son, you know, without me talking anything about gender equality, sees that how much time father is at home. A, then if he is at home, how much time he is spending in the kitchen, how much time is a quality time he's spending with him as a child, as a parent, you know. So the child also senses and gets the vibrations without any dialogue. So he's learning, unlearning in the process. Then, you know, of course, the important part is at school, you know, where, you know, the textbooks, the curriculum, the teachers, are they giving enough examples to show the diversity, the kind of rigid gender roles that should be not constructed, but rather, you know, questioned, you know, through various ways. You know, are boys given the works related which are always seen as feminine, and the opposite? You know, if in a classroom, say for example, the fuse has come out of a bulb, you know, if always, and it's a co-ed school, why is it that always a boy is told that to find out what happened? You know, if suppose there is no light, why can't a girl also be asked to find out into the root cause? You know, so there are, it all depends upon the kinds of parents and teachers we have. And of course, an important role which will play is, you know, to building respect and empathy. I always say respect for a girl or a girl's body is a learned behavior. It's never automatic. Let us remember, when we are talking about current times, you know, whenever any incident of gender-based violence happens, this question comes that why is it that men are not, you know, caring, or, you know, so we must remember these are all learned traits. So how, you know, the respect for uh, uh, for a woman in somebody's life, for a growing up child, you know, for a growing up boy to realize that whose father goes out for work and earns money, you know, is he having the same respect for the mother who works from morning till dusk, you know, without getting any income, and she's doing all the household chores? Is the invisibility of the contribution of women recognized by the child as a growing up? Then the growing up child will realize and develop that empathy that women are also important, productive citizens of society. So the respect at an earlier age can begin till the age of 5. Till the age of 5, the map is being drawn in the child's body, that, you know, how as a growing up boy later on, how will he treat the people in his life? So if he starts respecting mother at a younger age and other women in his life, so all that is built up, all that is learned, all that is he's learning through talk, through dialogue, through the sensing, and, you know, the kind of vibrations he gets at home and elsewhere. So I think, and of course, an important aspect of all this is sexuality education. So there is a dearth of integrated, comprehensive sexuality education in a country like India, where education is a state subject. Every state has a policy. But sadly speaking, in the state of Maharashtra also, there is a policy of no sex education in schools. So, you know, when I say sex education, it's not about anatomy, male anatomy, female anatomy. It's not limited to how sex happens and how a child is born. Those are just one part of it. But respect for each other, respect for other human beings, respect for somebody else's body, these are all learned behavior which will come at a younger age. You know, so I find there's a dearth. So even, you know, words like infatuation, attraction, and love. What is the difference? If a growing up child asks those questions, are they answered by a parent in the right way? So I find, consent and dissent, these are words which later on, as the child becomes an adult, those are definitely, he will have to confront, he will have to face, he will have to show whether he respects consent or dissent. But consent and dissent, ideas about that, if suppose the parents have only a single child who happens to be a male child, and they fulfill all the wishes of the child, so much so that the child has never heard a no in his life, so there are examples to show that if at a younger age he has never heard a no, then when he grows up and becomes 18 and he likes a girl, and if the girl is not responsive to his expectations, then you find that it's, perhaps that time, because all the other things in life, never was there a dialogue among the parents that everything, whatever you yearn, you need not get, you may not get. That kind of outlook he's not born with, the circumstances of growing up. So, one is, ideas about equality, how they are, imbibed at a younger age. Both the parents have a role to play, educationists have a role to play. The sad part is neither the educationists nor our ministries and functionaries of the government are keen to impart this vital sexuality education, which may be of growing up boys. The age of puberty is slowly declining. Everybody talks about that, whether it's of girls or boys. 11 years is the age of puberty. So is a 11-year-old boy taught about these basics about life skills education? So, if you answer that, we are, NGOs like ours, organizations like ours will cater to 10 schools, 15 schools, 2 communities where we are located. But isn't it the right of every growing up boy or a girl? Ask those questions. If those bother, then, I mean, if you realize in public society, if these things are issues, then they have to be talked as a multi-pronged approach. The different stakeholders are oblivious of all this. Yeah. Radhika, you may add.
Yeah, if I can look at this from a completely different perspective. Of course, we've been told right from the beginning that family, school, and all these institutions are really important for teaching our children all of these things. But while all that is obviously completely true, and our policy and all of it, like all our institutions need to reflect equality on many, many levels, while that is completely true. My learning from this film was that the play, which was admittedly sarcastic, and it was probably it was a bit risky to enter a public space with that level of sarcasm. It was actually children who really got it, who completely understood where we were coming from. And these were probably 8-year-old kids, and they knew, and boys, and they knew exactly what we were talking about. They knew that we didn't literally mean what we were showing. It was sarcastic, and it was the adults who got really uncomfortable in that particular basti and wanted us to stop. And even otherwise, even in other places, even in the men that we talked to who were so-called from well-to-do backgrounds, even they had either they misunderstood the play, or they had fundamental problems with the roles of men and women in society. They were from a very traditionalist approach. So actually children understand way more than we imagine that they do. And I think that from my side, I would say that I think media and films and all kinds of everything, actually, social media, audiovisual mediums, podcasts, or anything, all these things that children are accessing now from a very, very early age, whether online or through their schools and families and other things, those and conversations on social media, these are actually much, much more hopeful for me, because I think today, though there is a lot of all this right-wing upsurge and all of it, I don't think that it's so easy to get away with a blatantly sexist comment there is going to be a lot of conversation and debate and feedback about it. And people from all sections of society are reasonably from all sections of society are pretty vocal. So you can't just get away with, like, even we see this reflection even in films, that the kinds of scenes that used to come in films in the 80s and 90s, the kinds of roles of women and the kinds of characters that were written, which were, I mean, there were no characters written at all. Those don't exist anymore. And now there are a lot of progressive characters in films. So I feel like all the kinds of media around are already reflecting a certain image. We need to push much more in that direction, and young children will understand, definitely, I'm sure. And just one last point I wanted to make, that I actually don't think that we can place too much hope on family, because family is already very, very conditioned in age-old traditional practices. And I mean, this is my personal opinion. I am a little skeptical about how much children can learn today directly and only from family. Many times we are actually having those arguments and debates with people within our own family, whether it's about gender or politics or equality in general. So I think we have to look at other things, and we have to look at each other. We have to look at all the conversations that we're having.
Thanks a lot, Radhika. And Harish, you want to have a quick closing word before we end this, or depending on whether Altamash gives us time?
Yeah. If I guess people also want a little more dialogue,
Sure.
so because still there are 97 people.
Okay, so if you, I just wanted to, I was reminded of something, Mullah Nasruddin joke or an anecdote that I had heard, where there's Mullah Nasruddin is traveling aboard a ship, and the waves are really turbulent, and the ship is going to drown, and everybody's running and figuring out or praying, and Mullah Nasruddin is enjoying the view of the sea, and he's smoking a beedi. And they ask him that, Mullah ji, aren't you worried that the ship is going to drown? And he said that, why should I be worried? It's not my ship. So I think that's the kind of attitude, like the whole idea is to kind of keep oneself out of it, that, oh, this is the women's issue, I don't need to involve myself with this. Or even when things against the CAB NRC protests were going on, there was a tendency to call it, oh, this is you are doing the Muslim group activism, it doesn't really affect us. So this kind of immunity, self-declared immunity that we are having about, because I think, and the intersectionality of work like this, that everything in this society, the patriarchy, how it's manifested, children, upbringing of children, school education, rape culture, they are all related in such intrinsic manners that everything is a problem. And we need to take our stakeholders' responsibility very seriously on that note. So if I can ask Harish to really speak about what is the way ahead, the gaps after 27 years of working, we might have had some successes, but there is a long road ahead. So how do you see the future for this?
So, I would say that, Mawa's work for the last 27 plus years, I always say, it's like a drop in the ocean, even though we have achieved whatever, as an organization, we have tried to influence and change the mindsets of several young men and adolescent boys, in the last several years. And, we have tried to give, the safer space, the non-threatening space to several men and boys to come and examine, these different contemporary gender issues and their intersectionality, look into the roots of the problem, and, reflect on the mindset, reflect on how patriarchy works, and by the rigid roles which are imposed, on gender, on them also, so the ideas of those hegemonic masculinity or toxic masculinity is not just harmful for women, but also to men. So, if men are able to examine that, self-introspect, and also see their own upbringing as a growing up child to where they are, so I think those spaces, there's a dearth where, people can interrogate, where people can go into the roots of the behavior and, question uh, the notions about masculinity, and, that there are other ideas about being a man. If those alternatives are also presented or brought into discussion, into discourse, that is perhaps lacking. Because, as I just said, that, there are sensitive and caring people around, but those are not projected as much in the media, unlike the typical, hegemonic model type. So I find with my work, it has been demonstrated amply that men can be part of the solution. So through work, so with all humility, I could say some 700 plus young men whom I have trained and mentored in the last, say, 1 decade, they have reached out to over 3 lakh plus other peers and young men, and they are talking about taking up stands, active stands for the women in their lives. So they are walking the talk. They are not just preaching or talking about gender equality to an outside public. They are talking what they personally, so they have been intervening whenever they see any small instance of abuse happening in front of them. They are taking out protest demonstrations outside on the streets, and rallying for the cause of women's rights. So I find, and at a collective level, through street plays, film shows, interactive workshops, youth meets, variety and using social media, you will be shocked to if I tell you that using WhatsApp, which is normally seen as a medium for youngsters to just say hi, hello, and what are the things they do during the day. I have got my young team members who have engaged into serious conversations on gender using WhatsApp, and consistently for 2 years. It's not just few months, but they have had dialogue on what do you think about so and so thing, asking each other's viewpoint, getting to know a diverse viewpoint. So I find that, with my work, I have been able to, but there are surely this kind of work needs to be amplified further, where, the stakeholders, different kind of, whether it's a private sector bodies, government sector, women's groups, women's groups should continue working with women and girls. I have, absolutely respect for that, but I'm just talking that, unless men are also being considered by them, that they are an important stakeholder with whom they can also engage with through the community, through their regular work, how that gender, if it is an overarching theme, then in their day-to-day work, how they can, see men as allies in the struggle. And most importantly, what are the simple steps which every man, every growing up boy can do. I think that is what needs to be examined. So, simple steps, like I would say, if anybody is talking in a sexist kind of a manner, either through jokes or, say for example, a simple on WhatsApp, if somebody sends a derogatory message, about a woman, will that boy who has received that message convey to the sender that henceforth, if you send such a message, I'm going to unfriend you? Is that something not doable? It is doable. If there is a will, there's a way. If you have the mindset, the right kind of, mindset towards looking at women as human beings with their rights to say no and yes whenever they want to, I think, everyone can take up a stand. So one is, don't be a bystander. When incidents of abuse are happening in front of you, you should come ahead and, take up a stand, active stand up for the woman. Then the third important, I would say, words which are often said, swear words in the name of mother and sister. I'm sure any man who understands the meaning of these words which are derogatory, which are related to the genitals of women. And, by uttering those words, maybe in a fit of anger, to when you have anger over other men, those words are used, those bad swear words. So even if somebody takes a stand that henceforth I will not use those words, I think that's a small step. So, each one, you know, and the most importantly, having conversations, even if there are women who are watching this program, they can themselves also play a vital role in having a dialogue with the men in their lives, whether, at the workplace or at home or in their close midst, if they are friends, male friends, do they talk about these matters, which are so much, wherein men feel connected to these issues. All these years they have been disconnected. So unless you bring them into the conversation in the dining room or wherever you can, so I think there are each smaller steps, which are smaller incremental steps, which can be taken by any human being, men or women. Right now we are talking about masculinity, so the role of men and boys is very critical. At a individual level, everyone can take up a stand. And I think the idea of a gender equal society, if the vision at a younger age they are able to imbibe and then stand for it, to in order to actualize that, everyone, if they do their bit, I'm sure we would be able to see that small vision in a in a smaller manner in our day-to-day life. It would end there.
Yeah, so all these small individual steps, as Harish rightly said. So this was our first small step from our Manush, let's unbox gender and masculinity, a very very important conversation. And we are so happy that so many people are still wanting to continue this discussion. And we would really say that if you feel anybody who can benefit from this, please recommend them to come for our next event. We are going to be having something very regular, almost once in 3 weeks or once in 4 weeks, and we are going to have different panelists, different filmmakers, theater makers, writers, activists, uh, uh, film critics. And we really want to bring this discourse to a level where everybody is feeling equipped enough to take a stand. There is a vocabulary that even educated people like us, like it come after like hearing and reading and talking about these things. So please support Mava in our initiative. And our next announcement will be on our social media handles on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, of course, and on the website. And sorry for all the questions which we couldn't answer today, but I'm sure Altamash has made a list of them. And if Harish and Radhika and me, if
Definitely.
we could reply to them separately, we'd be looking forward to that. And
I think,
thank you once again.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, great, great, great. Thank you, Sachin. I think someone has shared
Yes.
I think the film is on YouTube as well, Radhika. Is it on YouTube as well?
Yeah, yeah. It's on
Yeah.
YouTube. Somebody's put the link on.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think
It's
there were
my Facebook.
certain people who had problem watching it, because of the connectivity. So definitely,
Right.
I put it on the chat box again. People who want to watch it, they can go through the link, or I'm sure they can just, do that search as well. Keep talking, and they'll
Yeah,
find it.
yeah. Maybe if they just look for Keep Talking Radhika
Yeah,
Murthy, it should.
yeah. And apart
I
from
think it
that,
should
as
come up.
Sanchit said, please do follow us on. Sorry, please do follow us on our Facebook page, Instagram page, and do visit our YouTube page as well, which is Mawang Mumbai, wherein you could see our, the documentation of a lot of our work. Last week we had a dissemination made. I think a few of you might be there as well. So please do watch that film, support our work there. Do share it as well, and leave a comment, subscribe. You can, yeah. Do follow us
A-
on
So
Facebook.
and
Altama should
if
be
you have other themes and other films or other books that you feel could contribute to this discourse, you want to share it with us. If you want to recommend other people who would like to come and speak on the panel, because the idea is we are not claiming that it is going to be an expert panelist who's going to be having this holier than thou.
Insta, because I think many people know the YouTube, which you just mentioned, but maybe the Facebook ID.
I've
And
put the handles. I've put the handles in the chat. Maybe I can put it again.
And
It's Mava Mumbai, both on Instagram.
Okay.
and Altamash, do you want the customary
Photo.
snapshot
Yeah.
from?
Let's do that.
Yeah, because I think the amount of different versions of the word patriarchy we have heard in the film, I think if everyone here has a different version of patriarchy, we'll have a wide range of smiles for this screenshot. So whenever Altamash
Let's
is
just
ready,
say let's end patriarchy, not just say patriarchy.
yes, let's end patriarchy and let this
Dismantle.
be
Let's
dismantle.
Dismantle.
Okay. So
So,
okay.
so maybe we'll need to have all the boxes instead
Yeah,
of
people,
one center.
if you would like to be in the photograph, please, can you just switch
Put
on
your
your
video
video
on.
for a second? We can take the screenshot and then we can end today.
So you'll accordingly adjust, Altamash, the screen.
Yeah.
You know, where instead of center box, right now it's looking like that. You
Yeah.
know, so if you can convert it to
It's fine.
all boxes.
Unbox it.
So what was our thing? Okay.
Dismantle
patriarchy.
dismantle patriarchy.
Dismantling patriarchy.
So we have visitors right from Australia to US
Good to
to
see you,
Burundi,
David.
from the Africa, quite a people from eclectic backgrounds and from diverse cultures.
Great.
Thanks
So
to
are you
this
able to take?
thanks to this lockdown, that people from different time zones could be a part of this, and I think that's going to be our focus for the next 6 months, because how do we continue to have this, because this impact of this lockdown has had a very significant kind of repercussions within the realm of gender, and so these things, before they are pushed under the carpet again, we need to continue having this discourse. And Altamash, whenever you say we can do a final goodbye and end this meeting,
I think we can go ahead. We can go ahead and end this.
So
Please go ahead.
Sudeep, Suraj Pawar, they are not visible. So if
Suraj
they
did
can put
come.
on their
Suraj did,
videos,
he did switch his video on. So he's here.
just for 1 minute for the photo, we need everyone. We are glad to have Sunil Suktankar also with us, eminent writer, playwright, and the film director.
Okay, so I'm taking another snapshot then. Again, dismantling. Let's dismantle patriarchy.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to say one thing, that there are a few people who like Vandita Jain is my camera person who's here. I don't know if anybody else from the team is there. Manohar Kabir, who was from the production, is here. I also I don't know. Maybe it's a point worth mentioning in this forum that my team was like an all-woman team. And like the camera, like direction, camera, editing, and sound, all four of us were from are all women. And very interestingly, our very able assistant directors and production team were men. And this is not to say that we want to reverse the patriarchy and make the power equation the opposite. It's just that I hope, like from what I remember, we had like a really great time making the film. And I mean, at least I had a great time. Hopefully the other people did. And I don't remember anybody yelling and screaming on the shoot at all. Even I didn't. So, and I don't. And I think that probably when men and women work together in a very different sort of dynamic, without the typical hierarchical structure that patriarchy, not men, I don't mean men, patriarchy brings, probably one can just have a lot more fun in life, very simply. So maybe we can just start having those conversations that, hey, maybe it's fun to talk to each other rather than like be violent. So yeah. So thanks a lot for calling me here. Thanks.
Thank you, Radhika, for making this film and coming on this first Kickstarter event of Manush. And is that it, Altamash? Can we wrap it now?
Yeah, I think so. Because there's another
And
call at 8:30.
Yes. And as I want to overuse the last line of the documentary once again, what the kid said, "Maidan mein milte hain."
was
You
so
know, we
beautiful.
continue the conversation on ground until we continue the conversation again online in September first week.
Yes.
Thank you
Yes,
once again
inshallah.
for coming and spending a valuable time with us. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks.